is happening.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, news director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Conference is going to have to figure out how we deal with 8 people that are here that candidly aren't interested in governing. They're more interested in grifting.
Republicans who have been claiming to be fiscal conservatives just voted with every single Democrat in the House of Representatives. That would be the equivalent of every Republican voting for Nancy Pelosi. That's what they did.
Mr. Jordan, how disappointed are you with what happened here and Speaker McCarthy?
I thought it was unfair to Kevin. Kevin, I think, has done a fine job, and he and I came in together. He's a good man, and he didn't deserve this, in my judgment.
Will you run for Speaker?
That's a decision for the conference.
3 Republican congressmen, Derek Van Orden, Austin Scott, and a very dejected Jim Jordan yesterday following the ouster of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. When this happened, my original thought, my initial feeling, and I don't let politics get to me. I mean, we cover this every morning. Steph and I, we try to explain this is why it matters. This is how it's going to impact you. And by the way, at the end of the day, very little impact. It's fun theater, fun soap opera stuff. My immediate feeling, my immediate reaction was dejected. Like, I was down. I came on Randy Tobler's show. He's here each weekday, 4 to 6. And I was, and I'm not kidding, and I can't think of the last time that happened. And I was just dejected. Your initial reaction?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the pure chaos. And so I was surprised. I mean, we heard from Luke DeMeyer, our own Congressman Luke DeMeyer and Congressman Alford on Monday. I don't think they were thinking, I mean, they didn't say exactly. I think they were frustrated, but I think a lot of people were surprised by this vote that all of these, I mean, am I surprised that the Democrats would fall in line? Not exactly. But I don't know that dejected is the right word. I'm disappointed, maybe. I think when we look back at what was supposed to be the red wave and, even on Biden's election, a lot of times I think people were just voting against chaos and they were afraid that if Trump got in, there'd be more chaos. And I'm afraid that this is more of that chaos and, that it's going to be, Republicans can't govern, whenever the Republicans are in charge, there's chaos and we're going to get, it's going to affect, I believe, the next cycle potentially. And that worries me. Raven Harrison here, 710, her take on it, plus reaction from Republican lawmakers, reaction from Democrats this morning. We don't need to go there. Hannah, as you were watching this unfold and seeing what was going on, what was your initial reaction?
I caught it on the Sean Hannity show as I was driving home last night, and I didn't even hear that there was going to be a vote happening. Maybe I just had my head under a rock, but I was surprised to hear that Hannity was carrying it. And when I tuned in, it was the votes for yes were already at 215, and Hannity said that it was this close, and Hannity, without saying that he thought it was stupid, pretty much made it sound like he thought it was a stupid idea.
Hannity's here weekdays starting at 2 o'clock.
It's just crazy to think that this has never happened before in the history of the country. That, to me, is huge.
Well, and what's interesting is you have people like Matt Gaetz who says, well, he's siding with Democrats. Matt Gaetz and 7 other Republicans. By the way, some of these Republicans, Ken Buck of Colorado, he's already been siding with Democrats as it relates to an impeachment inquiry regarding Biden. He has sided with Democrats regarding the investigation into Hunter Biden. Andy Biggs has sided with Democrats before, so I do not buy into the argument for 1 minute. Well, it's these folks teaming up with Democrats. You just voted with every single Democrat in the House. So if you want to find a different argument, I will welcome it. But to say that. And here's the other thing with Matt Gaetz. This is yesterday.
Speaker McCarthy's time is over. I wish him well. I have no personal animus to him.
That's BS. I have no personal animus to Speaker McCarthy when 48 hours ago you were saying things like this.
I'm done owning Kevin McCarthy.
You're being disingenuous because it's your latest TV appearance. That is my opinion. Marsh, your initial reaction?
Embarrassment.
Yeah.
Especially how we look on the world stage, and like Steph said, the perception that when the Republicans get in charge, it's chaos, and I guess this is proving it out.
Yeah, and you have to keep one other thing in mind. President Ronald Reagan, and I think for all of the listeners, particularly Republicans, you have to remember what President Reagan said about his 11th commandment. Thou shalt not criticize a fellow Republican. Do any of these people, have any of them heard of Ronald Reagan? Have they? Do you think they have? After what I saw on TV? I mean, I wonder if they even know. Ronald Reagan be turning over in his grave right now, looking at some of the stuff going on in Washington. He worked with Democrats, but it's a different environment. It's and I'm not sure anybody could function in this situation right now. You've got just a couple, the majority, whoever becomes speaker could be ousted tomorrow. It's just it's a very interesting thing. And I will say one other thing. Blaine Luetkemeyer the other day on our show said, Brandon, that Gaetz did not have the votes. He said that, and Gaetz obviously did. But I think Luetkemeyer, if you listen closely, you did. He felt like a lot of Democrats would vote present, but not enough did. I think it was about 7 or 8.
So Matt Gaetz or somebody went and worked with Democrats to secure those votes, to make sure they voted in favor of ousting.
I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm not going to say he worked with them, but I mean, clearly somebody did, because Luetkemeyer thought that the votes weren't there.
He certainly voted with them.
Well, and to me, I think the worst part is the timing of all of this happening, because we're facing another potential government shutdown in 40 days? And this is the worst timing ever. Why would he do this now of all times?
And I think that's the other thing, is bigger picture stuff. And I'll go to polls that have recently been showing Trump is beating Biden in several polls, not just that outlier of the Washpo ABC poll, but there are several polls that showing potentially some momentum. I think had been some momentum for the Republican Party, because even people that voted for Biden are getting it. They're frustrated. They want something different. So I think, there had been some good momentum. So Matt Gaetz, what about the new speaker, the new interim speaker, at least?
I do have to offer some pretty sharp criticism of the new pro tem.
Okay. There you go. 8 minutes into it, and there you go. And his criticisms are, by the way, this guy, Patrick McHenry, he is a Republican, North Carolina. He said, we're going to recess for a week. He says we need to take time, figure out what we're going to do. And I know some folks have criticized him, saying that Matt Gaetz is one of those folks who has criticized him. Now you're going to go off and cry for a week. And they're saying, no, we need time to figure out, if the speaker position is so important to folks like Gaetz and stuff like that, we're going to take some time and try to find a solution, a choice that would work for everybody.
I think that was the one positive for me this morning. It's being reported that Steve Scalise is already out there kind of making calls, and I think, I think he'd make a good speaker. I think, a lot of people look at him as kind of in that McCarthy camp, so whether or not he could get enough votes to get elected. But at the same time, I'm trying to think positively. Maybe, McCarthy's kind of been tainted from the very beginning, and and we've been through all of this. There's talk about maybe changing that rule on motion to vacate, so it wouldn't be as easy at some point. Now, maybe not while Republicans are in charge, but maybe some rule changes, maybe a fresh leader, maybe we can get I'm trying really hard to think positively. Maybe this will help us get past it.
And that's another good point. Coming up 6:50 this morning, just because some, kids say, and kids always keep me centered when I think about stuff like this, because I was just incredibly disappointed because of what I feel like had been momentum for conservatives and the Republican Party with this happening yesterday. Like, I got really dejected, and then leave it to a kid to remind me about what's important. Some cute audio coming up at 6:50. Matt Nichols, Columbia Police Officers Association, 6:35. We'll be talking about some things on a national level as it relates to law enforcement, and also local police officers, or at least the CPOA, not happy with the recent decision by the council regarding ARPA funding.
Yeah, the ARPA funding, Brandon, $25 million, and there was obviously Congress and the president's Congress passed it. The president signed it. President Biden And there is in that provision in the law, federal law, a provision for hazard pay for people that are essential workers. And the CPOA was hopeful the mayor and the council would include some of that hazard pay in there. That has not happened. Doesn't appear that it's going to happen. And they also wanted, there was about $2 million directed in the budget toward quote unquote community violence. But none of that is going to law enforcement. So CPOA is concerned about that.
And you know who handles community violence? Police officers. Just blows me away. Henry Cuellar, Democrat congressman who got carjacked the other night in Washington, D.C., was asked about what happened.
But what really got me upset?
The thing that got him most upset in all that, and he tells a very gripping story about he's just, and what surprised me as he tells the story is the quickness with which it happened. I mean, he gets out of his car and he says, boom, just like that. There's 3 people around him, 1 on each side, 1 behind him, at least 2 guys have a gun. And he said, just give me the car. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Cuellar knows karate, or karate as most of us call it. And he says, I assess the situation. I'm like, all right, man, here's the keys. But the one thing that really bothered him, we might get into that coming up at 6:35. And I think, by the way, this is a really good question. Listener Sean, I want to point this out. Via text 874-9390. Do you think it was a little petty for McHenry? He will be the interim speaker. One of his first items as interim speaker was to evict Pelosi from her office. And
so petty, yes. Kind of funny, also yes.
Thank you, Hannah. I don't feel bad because that's my immediate reaction. Oh, that's kind of funny. Yeah, and by the way, Pelosi out of town because she was attending services for Dianne Feinstein, who of course died last week at the age of 90. So, and Sean brings up a good point. You know, we talk about unity. Remember unity? January 20th, 2021. Remember when President Magoo got up there? Unity.
We can't even be unified within our own party.
And that's a really big issue. And there's some big events happening, I think, this weekend for both the Democrat Party in St. Louis and the Republican Party in Missouri. So I think that's going to be interesting to find out how they are going to be covering some of this stuff. Momentum. And I feel like we've lost it yesterday. But I also said this on the Tobler show yesterday. And I don't know if you agree or not, but this is soap opera stuff. Gas is still going to be expensive tomorrow. Groceries are still going to be expensive. We are still going to look silly on the worldwide stage. I don't know if this enhances our silliness.
I think it does.
Yeah. Coming up a few minutes from now, we are going to be doing the daily D.C. rundown.
Well, we heard that Kennedy might be jumping in as a third-party candidate, but we haven't heard about these folks in a while. We'll have an
always had a great relationship with him. He said very nice things, I know, this morning about me and the job I've done, Kevin McCarthy, so I appreciate that.
All right, former President Trump commenting on the McCarthy ouster yesterday. That is getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
But not saying a whole lot. That was on the heels of him being a limited gag order being imposed on him as it involves the civil business fraud trial. He was ordered to delete a social media post. That post had to deal with the clerk of the court, and the judge said personal attacks on members of my court staff are unacceptable, not appropriate, and I will not tolerate them. So Trump deleted the post, and there's a limited gag order about what he can and can't say. Specifically, he can't criticize the
And that's the other
court
reason
staff.
I talk about momentum for Republicans. It's like Trump had been behaving so well as poll numbers are going up. The poll numbers are continuing to show for what they are worth right now that he can beat Biden, that he would beat Biden. And then you got to go and I get court cases. Usually his poll numbers go up, but then stuff like this. And by the way, I saw the post. It wasn't. You shouldn't do it. I'll say that.
You should not do that.
Should not do it.
I think the judge was right there, although I think the judge has was not correct on some of his other rulings. But at the same time, it's also, I think, nice of the judge to say, hey, look, to take responsibility for his staff members and be like, look, you can criticize me all you want, but you're not going to criticize my staff. And I think that is a respectful thing to do.
And I still can't get over that judge mugging forward the camera the other day. I just happened to be watching that here in the studios. We were watching that court appearance getting ready to unfold live. And I thought like I was watching an old Jesse Waters comedy segment on Fox, because here's this judge doing like a 4-year-old kid when they see a video camera and they start twisting their head around and sticking their thumbs in their ears and going na-na-na, boo-boo. Like that's what it looked like. I was blown away by that.
Well,
kind of like you at the Zonda luncheon.
Exactly, John. Exactly. Well, Trump was commenting on McCarthy, of course, yesterday for the first time ever. We ousted a speaker. I just want to say, you said you felt like dejected. I felt disappointed. I've seen this meme go around after the pandemic, and it was people my age. It's like, I'm tired of living in historic times, because my entire adulthood, I went like 9/11, recession, pandemic. And so like every time they're like, this is the first time it's ever happened. I'm like, can I just live in like the normal times? Can we just like, and and I think a lot of times people have reminded us, hey, in the past, there has been significant disagreement. People have, gone to the mat or whatever. But the fact that this is the first time that it's ever happened reminded us just how crazy times we're living in. So, and now we have to pick a replacement. We don't have any idea on the timing. We don't have any idea really on who it's going to be. We know Steve Scalise is out there making calls, but it's likely going to be a week and a half, we think.
So if Matt Gaetz and them voted with Democrats again, could they make Pelosi speaker again? If they vote with the Democrats
Oh, my
again?
goodness.
They're going to go back to the earlier comments about we want Trump for speaker, like we saw back in the failed election.
I saw a lot of that yesterday already. Well, we are getting an update, a little update on no labels. Joe Biden, at least it's scaring Joe Biden enough that he's finally talking about it. Before he hadn't said much, and now he's super mad that Lieberman has kind of joined the no labels group. And he's saying it's going to help the other guy, and he knows it. This is a political decision he's making, and I obviously think it's a mistake. So No Labels is still pushing ahead. They've been out kind of pushing their message, and Joe Biden is publicly commenting on it.
So Democrats have problems, too. You got Joe Lieberman, who's, in effect, disagreeing with Joe Biden. You got folks like Henry Cuellar, the congressman carjacked the other night, who has been begging Joe Biden, my goodness, please do something about illegal immigration. You've got the Democrat congressman in Minnesota who's calling for Biden to be primary. So Democrats, they have problems, too.
And I have to give a little bit of credit to the Biden administration. I'm surprised that I'm doing it this morning, but this is an issue that really hits home here, even in Missouri, the fentanyl issue. And the Biden administration did announce sweeping action against basically upper supply chain fentanyl producers. So I think, 12 executives are being charged.
want to deal with open borders. They don't want to deal with the fentanyl pouring into Texas. They don't want to deal with, pushing back on China. They don't want to deal with the woke agenda killing our military. They don't want to deal with any of the pressing issues of the day. So it is left to us to govern.
Republican Congressman Chip Roy out of Texas talking about police funding. And it's not just a thing to Texas. It's not just a thing to us here in Mid-Missouri. It is a nationwide thing. Want to get his comments on this coming up shortly here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm Branden Rathert. There is Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
There's producer Hannah.
Hello.
John Marsh is here.
Good morning.
And Mr. Brian Houseworth.
Good to see you, sir.
Are joining us now on the show, Matt Nichols, President, Columbia Police Officers Association. I want to start with this question. Why is it in your mind progressives just will not support police?
I'm of the opinion that, we have seen, really since the days of Michael Brown and this anti-woke police movement, that there's a lot of money in hating the police. There's a lot of money in stepping away from the rule of law and allowing lawlessness to just, kind of rule our communities. And, maybe I'm, of the mindset and maybe I'm just a little bit cynical, but cui bono? Who benefits from the police not doing their job, and having money and funding taken away? Who's benefiting from that? It's about money, I think.
And we see this obviously in cities like San Francisco, New York City, Portland. Take your pick of any of these cities, and then we see in one of our mid-Missouri towns, Columbia. I know you sent a letter to us regarding ARPA funding and what the city council did or didn't do. What's the story there and your reaction?
Yeah, we've had these ARPA dollars for, 3 years-ish, something like that, for a long time. There's been a lot of money available. Some of the intent and purpose behind the act itself was, to reward the first responders who couldn't stay at home and isolate and distance away and had to spend time away from their families. And so we've been asking for that really from day one. And it's not about, hey, here's some free money, let's throw some money at the cops. It comes down to, we went through a lot. And, when people had the ability to stay home and work remotely, we didn't. I could give you 100 examples. Two very pronounced examples is I have one of my members that almost died. And when I say almost died, literally was in the hospital, hooked up to wires and all this stuff going on because of COVID, right? I have another member that was not allowed to have contact, and I say not allowed. She distanced herself from her family for 3 months because her daughter had an autoimmune disease, and their doctor said if she gets COVID, she's going to die. And so for 3 months, the only contact she had with her children was via Skype or Zoom or FaceTime. And, what incentive was there for that? There was none. We had our overtime stripped away. We had our off-duty work stripped away, which a lot of our members used to supplement their income. And all we asked for was just a little bit. We're not asking for the moon. We're asking, for the city council and the city to show their appreciation during COVID times for the good work that we did and for us showing up.
We are speaking here with Matt Nichols. Matt is a representative of the Columbia Police Officers Association. He is joining us live this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Matt, we appreciate you joining us. You mentioned the ARPA money and the hazard pay, and I did not know about this officer that almost died, so we appreciate that information. But you had also called on the council to allocate at least a few of the dollars from the $2 million for quote-unquote community violence for law enforcement, and yet zero. It appears
Yep.
Zero for law enforcement for quote-unquote community violence. Your reaction, please.
Brian, it's really discouraging. And we can talk about, the mayor's comments on Monday night. But here's what it is, right? This is the opportunity. And part of the reason this act was put together was to help combat violent crime, right? Yes, our people would love to have the hazard pay. We would love to feel appreciated, which we don't. We would love to feel valued, which we don't. But there was a potential that we could use this money for technology purposes. You know, we had the Fuses conversation, and there was a different pot of money we could have used for that. And the city council said, "Oh no, we know better than you do, so we're not going to do it." But there's different technologies. There's different programs that we could have used this money for to combat the violent crime that is rampant in Columbia right now. And the city said no. It really comes down to process and mission. The city loves to put a process before the mission. And that's what we've seen with this ARPA funding is they want to pay for another process instead of financing the mission to combat violent crime.
So talk to us a little bit more about this Office of Violence Prevention. Was there any conversations before the mayor just announced, hey, we're going to start this new office, actually talking with law enforcement about what the needs were? Was there, what was the communication like? And, what's the response been amongst your members?
If there were conversations, they were not had with me. They were not had with my organization. I will not ever stand in the way of a solution. Maybe this is a solution, but I am very hesitant to say so.
All right. Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, looking for a solution, because it's not that we always want to be combative, even though I think sometimes that can be the narrative. Well, you're just being combative. No, we're trying to find a solution. But my goodness, use some common sense. Our guest, Matt Nichols, Columbia Police Officers Association, joining us, talking about progressives and lack of, and not just financial support for law enforcement, just the overall vibe and the overall feeling from a lot of progressives about not getting support from city leadership and leadership all across the country. He's joining us this morning on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Matt, talk to us about recruitment and retention and what you hear from potential young people maybe going into the law enforcement field. It's scary trying to look down the road to see if you're going to have the staffing there, isn't it?
It is. It's, the number right now that we're down is somewhere around 40. I've heard, 36. I've heard 42. It's somewhere, somewhere in that ballpark. What I can tell you is if you look 3 miles to the north at the Boone County Sheriff's Department, I don't think they have any vacancies. Part of the reason is they have a phenomenal leader in Sheriff Carey. They have done what was needed to financially take care of their people. They have they have the ability to go out and do their job within the bounds of the law and within their department policy. And, they are given the tools and the resources to do good work and to do good things. I can't say that about us. I really can't, because any time we could get blasted publicly by our city leadership for doing our job. We don't know what tomorrow holds, and that worries people. And who would want to be a cop in that environment? And I've talked to a lot of folks around the state, especially within the FOP, and yeah, there was a huge lull in hiring, but it's coming back. People want to be cops again. And even if you look at our department, we're still hiring people. Like we're still putting people through the academy. We're still hiring laterals. But the problem is you can hire 5, but you lose 8. How do we retain people? And the way that the city has done with, over the course of our different labor agreements and with, most recently with this ARPA stuff, hey, man, it's wonderful. Let's go hire 10 people. But if you lose 15, you're still down 5, right? And that's where we are.
Yeah, I was going to add just very 2 quick things here. Jeremiah Hunter, who's the assistant chief, told me yesterday on the record, Matt, that they're down 37 officers. And I know that number changes, but it's 37, we believe, at this point, based on my conversation with Jeremiah. And another very quick point, Mayor Buffalo did not propose this this new office during the budget hearings that just were completed. They just approved the budget in September. In her defense, though, the child was just killed last week after the budget had been approved.
All right, Matt Nichols, Columbia Police Officers Association. The other thing that I thought is interesting. Listen, I want everybody to do well. I want all mid-Missouri to be safe and all that stuff. But when you have a mayor who says, well, they're doing this program in Baltimore. Here's a headline out of Baltimore. Baltimore isn't reducing crime. She says, well, they're doing this in Kansas City. Headline out of Kansas City. A crisis after a violent weekend. Kansas City is on pace for worst year in homicides. So it's the reasoning to this. Matt Nichols, Columbia Police Officers Association. Man, we appreciate you joining us here on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, got an email from a listener and telling a story. Apparently.
Oh, no. That's usually not good.
Right? So I had a friend who told me about an email sent to our work email address, talking about a friend got carjacked at gunpoint in a Columbia neighborhood, but says I didn't see anything in the news, and they're alleging the detective informed them that they're down by 36, 37, how many officers were down, and they can't compete with other jurisdictions. But apparently one of the things, and we saw this, I thought it was the murder, was it the professor's wife earlier this year? Somebody had followed her home apparently, and apparently these kinds of things are happening. Meanwhile, you've got a congressman, Washington, D.C., another safe harbor in Washington, D.C., got carjacked the other day, Henry Cuellar. He told his story, a fascinating story, because he talks about how quickly it happened. And he tells the story. He says, I'm just getting out of my car, going to my apartment, and next thing I know, there's 3 dudes around me. 2 of them have guns. And in the interview, he said this.
But what really got me upset?
The thing that really got him upset. We'll cover that. Coming up 5 minutes from now here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Some thunderstorms maybe today are high. McCarthy being ousted yesterday, 7:10. Raven Harrison is going to be joining us with her take from everything my initial take yesterday was just the word I'm using is dejected. The word Steph is using
disappointed.
Like a disappointed. I feel like my dad has looked at me in a disappointing fashion. Seriously, I mean, that was almost a physical reaction to what went down yesterday. It's like, come on, man. And here's why. You've got momentum, I think. If you look at pollings for what polling is worth as it relates to Trump and his chances of beating Uncle Joe, there is momentum there. And again, this a year after the big red wave and a year prior to the most important election in our lifetime. Well,
for real this time.
For real. I know I said it in 2022, and I know I said it in 2020, and I think, did I say it in 2018, John? Do you remember? Did I say this is the most important election of our lifetime?
If you didn't, you should have.
And then I said it in 2016. I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, 2014. Same thing. Welcome into the show. Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth. I am Branden Rathert. Thank you for being here. 874-9390, 874-9390. I thought it was interesting. Henry Cuellar, I want to share this story because just yesterday we did a segment on the show called How Not to Get Carjacked. And it's just some of the more interesting tips about how you situate your car in traffic, parking places, things like that. Besides, I think a lot of the common sense stuff. Be careful. Situational awareness. But as Henry Cuellar, Democrat congressman from Texas, was sharing his story about how quickly this can happen.
As I got out of my car, all of a sudden I see two individuals that just ran to the door because I was just opening up the door to get out. And they said, "We want your car." And I looked at one that had a ski mask. You can tell there were young folks. I mean, I hate saying this, but there were young punks with guns. So I looked at one of them, said, "I want your car." He had a gun pointed at me. I looked to the other side. There was another one with a gun pointed at me. I looked behind me. There was a third guy behind me.
Let me ask you, do you think, John, and I'll ask you, because I always think, sure, man, if somebody comes up and they've got a gun pointed at my head and they want my 1978 Subaru Brat car, sure, you can have it. I don't know that I would be able to do that because I would be so mad that somebody is trying to take my stuff.
Your principles that you're always talking about would get you in a lot of trouble.
That's right, and it probably would. But I would die happy. I would be
pretty much be it. Yeah,
I would be shot in the head happily. No,
principles are one thing when you're staring down the barrel of a gun, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, my principles are a little different. I don't know that I could just do that because I would be so mad. I guess probably an easier decision for most people. Somebody's got a gun to your head, you'd hand over the keys.
I don't know how. I mean, yeah, I would comply, but I think I would just be like frozen from just sheer terror and the shock of like what he was saying. It all happened so fast.
Yeah, and that's how quickly it can happen to anybody.
Well, I mean, I used to work in a bank, and the guidance we were always given is if you're getting robbed, like just do what they say to get them out of the building, and then we'll deal with, what to do next after you're safe.
Well, I think a lot of times, and I speak from some of my own experiences when facing very odd or frightening situations in life, like adrenaline can take over and an automatic thought process can take over that you think, well, I wouldn't do that. Like there's some things that I've never I ran into a burning home to save an old dude, lumped the old dude over my shoulder and carried him out of the house. Yeah, Pensacola, Florida. Yeah.
You have lived the wildest life. Every time I hear another story, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense.
Well, about that, I didn't know the dude was in the house. I thought there was a parrot they had in this house. They were next door, and they were 2 houses down, and I was trying to save the parrot. Turns out there was a dude in there, too. So I slung him over my shoulder and walked out.
2 birds, 1 stone.
There you go.
Nice. Henry Cuellar, obviously not happy.
But what really got me upset is that they stole my sushi. That's what got me upset, Jose.
I like that. When you can have a sense of humor, and those are the things I think are important in life. We had a lot of focus on the discord in the Republican Party, and what happened yesterday, where you had 8 Republicans voting with every single Democrat in the House. I think party-wide frustration is the sense I got yesterday, and those are things that. Hey, this matters, your safety and your kids, things like that. You got to spend time with your kids yesterday. How cool was that?
I did, yes. But have you? Yeah, no, that's what's important. But have you seen the price of sushi lately? I'd be mad too, honestly.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, that's a hot commodity.
Coming up.
With 8 people that are here that candidly aren't interested in governing. They're more interested in, grifting.
Republicans who have been claiming to be fiscal conservatives just voted with every single Democrat in the House of Representatives. That would be the equivalent of every Republican voting for Nancy Pelosi. That's what they did.
Mr. Jordan, how disappointed are you with what happened here and Speaker McCarthy?
I thought it was unfair to Kevin. Kevin, I think, has done a fine job, and he and I came in together. He's a good man, and he didn't deserve this, in my judgment.
Will you run for Speaker?
That's a decision for the conference.
Derek Van Orden from Wisconsin, Austin Scott from Georgia, and a very dejected Jim Jordan out of Ohio. My initial reaction to House Speaker Kevin McCarthy being ousted yesterday, dejection.
Disappointment.
Hannah?
Embarrassment?
Marsh?
Yeah, that was my line for sure.
RavenHarrison.com. Your initial reaction?
Elation. Party time.
Why?
Because this is what I've been saying for a long time about what it means for we, the people. We saw politicians get a warning shot across the bow of what happens when constituents are fed up with them running their own agendas and not handling the people's work. Plain and simple. They sent a clear message that it is we the people, not we the politicians.
But isn't that what Matt Gaetz has been doing? We the politician?
No, what Matt Gaetz did was show that there is some accountability. They put these rules in, 15 votes to get the speaker. He was unpopular. He had moved into the speaker's office before he had even been voted there. So how did Pelosi and Biden let that happen? They let him move in before he was even voted or put up on a ballot for speaker. And when it took 15 votes, he made certain deals. He said that we were going to start getting this Congress running the way it's supposed to be running, getting legislation that we have time to read, legislation that is single bill instead of all these multi-things tied in and people don't have a chance to read it, and writers. And he agreed to all of this. And if people have been keeping track, Kevin McCarthy has not kept one single promise that he has made in coming in. We don't have a balanced budget. We don't have spending cuts. We don't have the January 6th case that he promised to release. We don't, he ran through this thing with Biden and floated through the Ukraine spending. He said he wasn't going to support. Then he said vote on it. And then when it wasn't voted on, then he threw it in at the last minute anyway. So he has not done anything. He has accomplished nothing. Matt Gaetz, on the other hand, said he was going to do this. He said if he doesn't keep his word, if he doesn't do what he agreed to get the speakership, we are going to vacate the chair. So as far as Matt Gaetz goes, 1-0 for keeping his word.
But what about this? So I'm zooming out, looking at bigger picture. I just think it's such a bad timing for the Republican Party because we're a year removed from the big red wave that did not materialize. We're less than a year out from, or about a year out from, the most important election of our lifetime. You've got Trump and poll after poll, for what polling is worth, showing he's starting to get some momentum on numerous polls. More than one poll says Trump could win. In my eyes, Raven, it is bad timing for the Republican Party as a whole because this is embarrassing.
Well, I disagree. I think that's the narrative that the left puts out there. But what I think you're seeing, and I think that they're scared too, as much as they don't want to admit it, but this is accountability. This is what we asked the Republican Party to do. We told them stop rolling over, stop jumping into bed with the Democrats, stop going along with everything, stand up for the party principles, stand up for your constituents, and people have been pushing back. So when they actually do that, now they're calling him a traitor. They did the same thing when they held out on the speaker vote. They said, hey, why don't Republicans stand up? And then 19 said, okay, we'll stand up. And they said, traitors.
But you have 8 Republicans that just voted with every single Democrat in the House. And when I hear these people saying, well, they've been siding with Democrats, well, that's exactly what 8 Republicans did yesterday.
No, what you saw was politics being politics. What that showed is if you look at Kevin McCarthy's track record over the last 10 years, the majority of the time he sides with the Democrats. That was before he was speaker. That was before he was being required to. And he made these deals. He actually made deals that he did not keep. And everybody seems to be more angry at Matt Gaetz for calling him to task than they are with Kevin McCarthy for not keeping his word. But what you're seeing in that, the Democrats, why didn't they support Kevin McCarthy when he's been going along with pretty much everything they want? He's been going along with their everything because that's what the Democrats do. They banded together and they locked in step because they wanted the chaos and confusion, but change is uncomfortable. So I know how people are feeling, but this is what we asked them to do. We asked them to stand up for the people. And if you look at the polls, the people are thrilled about this. The people who are unhappy are the status quo politicians. The establishment is ticked off.
So
and what people are saying is good.
So for people in your camp who said this is a good thing, what's next? Who replaces McCarthy that changes the system?
Well, see, this is the point. That's where we, the people, we sent the warning shot across the bow and said, listen, this isn't going to get it. He's had 9 months. He hasn't changed a single thing. So now they're going to need to pick somebody. They're going to need to get together and do the work they should have been doing and figure out who is going to move this forward. There is never a good time to make change, but when's a good time to get $33 trillion out of debt? When is a good time to hold politicians to task? Should we do it now? Should we wait till they're campaigning and they come for money and say, yeah, we were really close, but if they can't figure out how to get this, then they don't deserve the support of we the people. This is what politicians supposedly get elected to do, is figure out how to get things done, and we have not gotten things done. So that's where I kind of stand on that of, is it wonderful to not have the speaker and have the party infighting? Of course not. But how has the kumbaya been working?
And the timing, when? I would say in 2024, after we have a big red wave and after we have Trump as president.
So how are we going to have a big red wave if nothing changes? If we keep flooding money to Ukraine, the border's still open, the Republicans are not standing, and we can't get inflation down because the Democrats refuse to quit spending. So how do we get to 24 and a big red wave if we allow the status quo and keep getting steamrolled by these policies that are destroying our economies on life support?
And
the border's wide open.
Ken says,
can't do it.
Bravo, Raven. And Darren says, thanks, Raven, for pointing out all the facts about McCarthy. So, Raven, I think a lot of folks are in your camp and wanted this to happen and said it's past time to just stand up and do something.
Our guest this morning.
People too. We gotta do better, and the way it starts is with us, guys, and that's how we make the change. We're not going to heal in the same environment that made us sick. The politicians who created this problem are not going to be the ones to fix it. We are.
Raven Harrison, RavenHarrison.com, on fire this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Raven, if it was up to you, who would you like to see as the next speaker? And maybe the other part of that question is, who do you think may be the next speaker?
Oh, if it was up to me, it would be Trump all day and twice on Sunday. But if I had to take another one, my money would be on Byron Daniels. He's the one so far, besides Matt Gaetz, who's shown that they're going to stand up and they're going to stay the course. That would be the change I would like to see. It would also drive the left crazy because it would be a narrative destroyer. But that he's shown to be a fiscal responsibility. He has a financial background, and that's what we really need is people to get some common sense back in here who are actually listening to their constituents.
All right, Raven Harrison is joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. So besides being on fire and being in favor of what Matt Gaetz did, what else is on your mind this morning? Let me ask you this as a parent, because one of the things we're trying to focus on a little bit here, one of the things that's really important, these things, am I going to make mortgage at the end of the month? Can I afford the next tank of gas? And we're going to highlight a couple of things that are important, like as it relates to kids. Kids always remind me, man, this is what's important to life. You're a mom, you're a wife, you do all this stuff. Like, what's the biggest thing personally on your brain this morning?
Well, what it is just reminding ourselves why we are doing this. We got to take our egos out. We got to take our pride out of this, because pride always comes before the fall. But what I tell people is my priority is making sure my kids, when these things are happening, they're in homeschool now, but this is my opportunity. This is not public school at home. This is homeschool, this is the time when we have so little time to impart our values, our structure, our financial sense, our common sense on our kids. So we were really taking that opportunity now. We traveled. We just got back. We went to Salt and Light, North Carolina. We spoke with Alveda King, and my daughter's like, her last name is King. I said, yeah, that one. She's the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we were on stage with her. What an honor, but talking to the people who were in the 60s in segregation, and my kids are getting living history, and there's nothing that competes with that, with this opportunity to really show them the America they're fighting for. Travel, love it, meet people, shake people's hands, get out there in the dirt with the rural farmers and really learn, that you're fighting for every blade of grass. This is your country we're fighting for. So when we're done, they're going to have to pick up the mantle.
I want to highlight this audio because serious news stories this morning, but we were talking about kids, and you just mentioned Martin Luther King. So I'll do this audio. This is a little kid, and Stephanie knows she's got 3 young kids. I've got 3 grandkids. Kids say the darndest things can make us smile sometimes, but it's this mom. She's asking her daughter what she learned about at school. She's trying to say, Raven, she's trying to say Martin Luther King. Her response here is priceless.
Learn about in school. Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. What'd he do? He died for our sins. No, that was...
I thought that was really cute, and that's the point, to make us laugh and smile. And got to tell you, you are getting a lot of support via text this morning, 874-9390. I think one of them that's very telling. Listener Paul says, I'm with Raven. I didn't want this to happen, but I am glad it did. I'm stepping back.
Amen.
And I'm looking at bigger picture, and it's just concerning to me on a bigger picture. And I hope, Raven, that you are right. This is one of those situations where, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we have a big red wave in 2024. I hope this doesn't. And actually, there's a very good text from another listener who's saying, parties, not about parties. Listener Dale says, I'm so tired of hearing the Republican Party this, the Republican Party that. Stop the whole dang party stuff. And I appreciate that, because that's one of the things that I've said before. I'm independent, libertarian, conservative, whatever you want to call it. I subscribe to a lot of those things. But and he says, this is not an attack on you guys, but it's about the parties. Dale, thank you for your text. Raven Harrison, please go check out her website, man. She's on fire here every week on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, and you should see some of the stuff she is doing on her website. Raven, always fun hanging out with you.
I love you guys. Thanks so much.
All right, we love you too. Coming up a few minutes from now, we are going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah.
Girl Scout cookie news. Oh. It's not all good.
Are there animals involved too, though? Like we're
Now, we're in pumpkin spice season, and I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but Girl Scout cookie season is on the horizon. It officially gets started in January, but there's actually 2 different trending stories this morning out about Girl Scout cookies. And some people get really, really serious about their Girl Scout cookies.
They get serious about Speakers of the House and Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're going to unify the country,
Unity.
Let's just talk about Girl Scout cookies. Now, do you remember last year they released a new Girl Scout cookie that was supposed to be like a cousin to the Thin Mint, but it was raspberry flavored. And folks were buying these new cookies, and they sold them out, and then they were selling them on eBay for like hundreds of dollars for one box of these raspberry rally cookies. Well, the Girl Scouts organization said, maybe we shouldn't do that again. And after just one season, they discontinued that cookie.
So no more scalping Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah, they said the flavor was extremely popular, but we're taking a pause this season to prioritize supplying our classic favorites. And they're doing that and prioritizing that because they're having to raise the price of their cookies.
Oh, gosh.
Thanks, Biden.
They were already like $7, and there's like 12 cookies in the box. I mean, really.
Well, so, not to sound like a boomer, but back in my day,
they were $2.50.
Yes, they used to be like $2-3, and now this season they're going to be $6.
No
for
way.
a small box of cookies.
Bidenomics.
Yeah, shrinkflation or something like that.
Is it still a thing where people come into the office and they have that sheet of paper and they're like, hey, you want to buy some Girl Scout cookies from my daughter? Or is it just all they're hanging out in front of Walmarts and places like that? Do they still?
Which that's the worst, because when people are camped out in front of the entrance to the grocery store, you have to do the whole avoid eye contact game.
Horse blinders.
Yeah, because I'm awkward and I don't want to tell somebody no. But it's even worse when it's little kids, because then you feel like a you-know-what.
Mm-hmm. Or when people, man, Marsh, you ever seen this in front of the grocery store? You walk in and somebody's got a box of puppies there. Now, with the exception of Stephanie, who's not a...
And they're feeding them Girl Scout cookies.
And they're feeding, and they're like, and then they get a little 8-year-old kid, and they got the box of not cookies. They got the box of puppies, and they're like, hey, do you want to adopt this cute little puppy?
And the puppy's crying.
And they're all trying to get out of the box, and it tugs at your heartstrings, and you say, no, kid, I hate dogs, so no thank you. I appreciate what you... I mean, that's not what I would say.
That's what Steph would tell them.
Yeah, certain members of the show.
So is it still a thing where you take around the sheet of paper and order cookies? Because I remember that thing,
Go check the break room if you want to know the answer to that one real quick.
I was going to say, the past couple years here at Zimmer, I don't know if I've seen an order form for Girl Scout cookies.
Because it's like that. Like you said, you're walking in front of the store and you got little kids trying to sell you cookies. And like Hannah says, you got to avoid eye contact and you don't want to tell them no. But when it's somebody that's in your social circle every day from 9 to 5 and you're the break room, and Alice from accounting comes up and says, hey, my daughter is selling some Girl Scout cookies. Do you want to buy some? That's also a hard time to say, no, thanks, Alice. I'm good.
It's even worse when the little neighbor girl knocks on your door at home.
Is Hannah here?
His grandma gave him $250. He could have been like, I'm not doing anything. But his dad said, nope, you start from the bottom. So that's what I also teach my kids. And I also have to teach them, we're not rich. I'm rich.
Shaquille O'Neal. Every time I hear that, John, it makes me laugh and it makes me go, right on. He's absolutely right. We're not rich. I'm rich. And I bring that up because John's favorite rock band in the world, it's the Rolling Stones, right?
Pretty much.
Mick Jagger was asked why he wouldn't sell his music catalog. So we're not going to sell the Rolling Stones music catalog. And he was asked why. He says, because my kids don't need $500 million. What am I going to do with this money? He says, I creatively own that. Why would I sell it for money? What am I going to do? Leave it to my kids? And it got me to wondering. So I grew up in a house. Our grandfather, who had a lot of money, he had told us for years prior to him ever dying, even well before he was ever close to death, he was always, and it wasn't like, hey, gather around the table, I got some bad news for you. It was just always understood, whatever I have left when I'm done, it ain't going to you guys. He says, there's some things I want to give it to. I want to give it to some Missouri causes. I want to give it to some charities. And I feel like I kind of grew up in the minority because I hang out with a lot of folks, and it's just expected when mom and dad or whoever dies, you get that family money. And I didn't grow up that way, and I ain't expect. It'd be nice, Dad, if you happen to be listening. You probably won't be listening until 9 o'clock when the Gary Nolan show comes on, which is going to be Dave Rowland is hosting today. So Dad's probably not listening online right now anyway.
Well, and people they're living longer, right? And so, like, by the and that's great. I'm very fortunate that I have both of my parents living right now. But obviously I wasn't like sitting around waiting for some lump sum, and I hope I don't expect them ever to give me any money, right? And
she's 90 years old now.
I mean, and I don't think I don't know their personal business. My grandparents died when I was really young. I don't think they inherited a lot of money. If they did, they're hiding it somewhere from me. But I will, when I went and met with our a lawyer to put together our trust and our estate and do our work, they said, well, I remember he looked at us, he goes, well, at what point do you want what age do you want your kids to get the lump sum? And I was like, lump sum? I'm like, I was still facing, I'm like, I'm still in the negative, bro. Like, I still have student loans. I have a mortgage. Like, there's no lump sum. And he's like, well, let's think long term. Eventually, if there was any money left, what age does the kid get it when they're 18? That answer is no. Do they get it when they're 25? Is there some sort of stipulation? And then you get into like the conversation we're all wrestling now, like what's the value of a college degree? Because I think before in a lot of these documents, it was like, okay, the kid has to graduate from college and they maybe get a bonus or they get this. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to put that. I don't know that by the time we get there that I wouldn't want my kid to just go into trade school or be a chef or like do something. I don't think a college degree, and I would have to go back and read exactly, but it was a in-depth, long conversation about, okay, if there is any money, which I don't expect there to be much.
When I was chatting with an attorney, it had been several years ago, and saying, okay, when you die, this, and that, and he's like, what do you want to go to your kid? And I'm like, you mean like material stuff or any money? Because I got neither one, really. I mean, what? I got nothing.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, and then I think what Shaq was saying is like, and I heard a woman recently, and she had quoted Shaq, and she was like, my kids ask me, are we rich? And they're like, well, Dad and I are doing pretty well, but you're broke. And I think, how do you parent, how do you parent through that? If you do, if you are in a position where you can share, at what point, I have this conversation regularly with some of my peers and people in my circles. At what point do you cut off your kids and stop supporting them, even though Hannah,
sorry,
even though you can? At what point are you doing them a disservice by paying for stuff and not teaching them to be independent? It's like me, but like talking about people before they have kids, because my kids aren't there yet, and so I'm saying you shouldn't, but I'm not the mom who has the 17-year-old or the 22-year-old who's like, but Mom, I need help. So
23,
whatever. But and my parents did, they helped support me through undergrad. Once I got to law school, and once I was married, they were like, all right, you gotta figure this out. But I was fortunate in that way, and I haven't had to face that question. And I might eat my words later, but I think
it's not eating your words, it's evolving on the issue. We get more information as happens from time to time here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, John Marsh, Brian Houseworth. I'm Branden. We evolve.
It's a struggle. I mean, you want to teach your kids, but at the same time, you never want them to go without. And so I don't know. It's a hard choice.
I did finally get my own Netflix account.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I may or may not have only done that because I got booted off of the other one, but
Yeah, we got booted off the one we were on too.
Oh, are they cracking down?
Oh, big
oh
time.
yeah.
Really?
You have to set your home Wi-Fi, like home base, basically. And so when we would try to sign into Netflix from our house in California, which is, far away from my parents' Wi-Fi network in Centralia, we would get this lovely message that says, looks like you're not on the home's Wi-Fi network. Are you traveling? Or is this not your account?
So like 120 today, if you're at home watching Netflix and all of a sudden you're trying to get on and it's a hacked account or a shared account, which you aren't supposed to be doing anymore. I guess Netflix doesn't like theft. And you hear bzz, 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 or whatever, you're going to think, uh-oh.
Theft is a strong word.
They caught you.
They caught me. 120, what's happening this afternoon, 120 our time, Marsh?
No, they're doing the national dual tests of our alert systems, FEMA and the FCC. Basically, it happens about 1:20. We'll sound the tones here on the radio station, and your smart device will go off as well. But really, keep an eye on the weather, obviously. But you really don't have to do anything.
8:10 this morning, one of the things we'll look at, there's a group of folks that are being encouraged to turn off their cell phones prior to this. And it's kind of interesting, the group that say, hey, turn your phone off.
Yeah, folks who might have a phone that other folks don't know about. So specifically people who are in maybe a domestic violence situation, sometimes you'll have a phone. And what they're saying is what you need to know is even if you put your phone on Do Not Disturb or you have it on one of the silent modes, this thing will still go off. The only way to ensure that the alarm doesn't go off and that this other phone doesn't ring is you have to turn it off.
Have you seen all of the tinfoil hat conspiracies?
Yes.
On Twitter?
I don't understand. I mean, I saw, what are they saying that it actually does?
I haven't seen anybody specifically say what they think is going on, but a lot of people are like, this is an invasion of privacy by the government. Like, why do they need to test all of our devices? They're up to something.
Well, I'm one of those guys. Like, I don't have an Amazon. I don't buy stuff online because I'm a cranky old dude and I don't want to put my banking information online.
You just make other people do it for you from their accounts.
And I think about this when people would say, well, I don't want the government to know. The big thing was, I don't want the government to know where I live. And I said, well, do you get mail at your house? Yeah. Government knows where you live.
Pretty much.
Yeah. 874-9390. 874.
Did you see Tiffany's text? She texted us at 874-9390. She said, I heard the alert is supposed to mess with the COVID vaccine. Yeah, and it's going to take down 5G, too.
Yeah.
Just get the trifecta there.
But I do think, it doesn't, okay, but in fairness, doesn't it freak you out a little bit that the government basically has control over your cell phone? I mean, honest, that they can make your cell phone sound even when you've chosen Do Not Disturb or silent or whatever else, that they can simultaneously, think about it. During COVID, if they just wanted to, turn your phone off. I don't know
Well, they can track you on it.
Well, yeah. And then you think, the push to electric cars. If all of our cars were controlled by computers, then what access does the government? I don't want to get.
So, and here's the thing.
It freaks me out.
I'm on board with you because look at Biden administration yesterday, I think another court ruling saying, hey, listen, as it relates to the federal government trying to clamp down on free speech on social media outlets. Remember the big ruling on 4th of July, and a federal appeals court has expanded limits on the Biden administration in a First Amendment case. So I get frustrated when Biden says Trump is a threat to democracy. Freedom of speech, Mr. Biden, that is a threat to democracy.
I guess it doesn't wig me out that much because, using radio as the example, the federal government regulates things like our radio towers and our radio signals and things like that. So
content.
So to me, it's like, I don't know, Big Brother is always there. It doesn't bother me, I guess. Maybe it's my age.
Big Brother is always there knocking at the door saying, we're Big Brother. We're from the government. We're here to help you. That's what they do. 874-9390. 874-9390.
And I also feel like it is important to test these alert systems because if something catastrophic were to happen, the government needs to know that they can send out this mass alert if it's needed. Hopefully it's not ever needed, but if it is, it's good to know that it works.
It's like when they test, and I think today it's first Wednesday of the month. Then I think there's another the tornado sirens tested, and I don't know if that's statewide.
I think that's usually on Thursdays.
And as long as they're not like this.
This has been a test of the St. Louis County Emergency Outdoor Warning Siren System.
That
we have that in downtown Jefferson City, although they added like fun little bells to the front just recently. There's like a little song that plays, and then it gets the creepy Hunger Games voice.
Yeah, it's a Winchester Westminster chimes is what it is on when they test it, which is a little different.
So I lived in Jefferson City for about a year, and I was still in college at Mizzou, and I remember I was finishing up my last ever college final at my apartment in Jefferson City, and the tornado sirens started going off, and I'm terrified of storms. I'm a little chicken. I turn into a little toddler when I hear thunder, like, oh my God, the sky's falling. So I'm scared. I'm trying to finish up this final before my deadline, and the sirens start going off. So I'm hunkered down in my half bath with no windows, trying to, get my final turned in. And then I find out later we were never under a tornado watch or warning. It was for severe weather alerts. And I guess that's a Jefferson City thing, John?
Well, they'll sound the sirens when there's, dangerous, severe thunderstorms that aren't technically at the stage of a tornado, but that's what I think there's probably misconception about that a little bit, no matter where you are on the siren warnings, but they will sound them for severe weather as opposed to a tornado.
I was sitting there stressing myself out, hunkered down for this tornado coming, and turns out it was just some hail.
Raven Harrison joined us on the show earlier this morning. Her take on the McCarthy Gates thing. She was on fire about that. Eli Drinkwitz yesterday, apparently telling folks, "Hey, we've got a sold-out game against a ranked SEC opponent Saturday. Come to the stadium early. Don't be there at 11. Get there early. Get there 10:30, 10 o'clock. Race them. Heck, I kind of liked it." Eli Drinkwitz was on fire. And you should join us. So 2 hours prior to the kickoff, 11 a.m. kickoff. Starting at 9 o'clock, we are doing the biggest Tiger tailgate party there is in all of Missouri. Buffalo Wild Wings. We are giving you free Bud Light, high noon. Hy-Vee, Echo Water Systems, Twain Barbecue, and Tap Room all helping us out. And here's all you need to do. You can go to places like Club Car Wash in Columbia. You can go to Vaughn Pools and Spas, Jeff City. Also, Club Car Wash in Boonville. You ask for some passes. They will give them to you. They are free. They'll give you up to 4, and I think those are going to be out today. Coming up a few minutes from now, that would be all except for this. What do you have, John?
Well, like Henry Cuellar getting high on soup.
Hopefully a better day than yesterday. As a matter of fact, Stephanie Bell's going to be looking at futures coming up at 8:25 in the Morning Bell. Business news with a little twist.
I am learning from the Wall Street Journal about a new retirement haven, or maybe an old one.
And that would be all, except for this.
Aren't the only critters who suffer from substance abuse issues. Horses, summertime, they'll eat the gypsum weed out of the field. They say elephants get drunk on overripe fruit, and bighorn sheep love narcotic lichen. Monkeys' attraction to ethanol-containing sugary fruits may say something about our attraction for alcohol. Dolphins, the latest ones, using their ingenuity in the pursuit of getting high. Young dolphins, while they were being filmed in a documentary, were seen manipulating a puffer fish, which, if provoked, releases a nerve toxin. And it turns out the dolphins appeared to work out how much to make the fish release. So they chew on the puffer fish, they pass it back and forth, and then they enter what the documentary producer called a trance-like state. He said after the puffer fish was chewed on and passed around, they began acting most peculiarly, hanging around with their noses at the surface, fascinated by their own reflection. And he compared it to people a while back who were licking toads to get a buzz. So the deal was they filmed the dolphins doing this, and they hid the camera in fish, squid, and fake turtles. So get high on the sushi. And they didn't say if the dolphins got their car carjacked or not, but now you know the rest of that story.
The dolphins passed around the ear.
That poor puffer fish.
Don't bogart that puffer fish, my friend.
Don't bogart the fish. The puffer fish. So the reference to Henry Cuellar, he's a Democrat congressman, got carjacked in Washington, D.C. the other day, and he was telling his story on Fox News. Two interesting things about that. Number one, he talks about, and we just covered this on the show yesterday, 7:35, how to not get carjacked, but he talks about the quickness with which it happened. The dude just getting out of his car. And he says, just like that, 3 dudes run up on him. He's got one to his left, one to his right, and he's got a grocery bag of stuff or whatever, and he's got a dude behind him. 2 of them have guns pointed at him. Said, give me the keys. He's like, it was just that quick. But the thing that upset Mr. Cuellar the most...
But what really got me upset is that they stole my sushi. That's what got me upset, Jose.
So I thought that was just kind of an interesting... and keeping it real, man. Keeping it in perspective. Coming up a little bit after 8 o'clock here on the show. By the way, we were talking about the Big Mizzou football game, LSU this Saturday. I'm loving Eli Drinkwitz's attitude on this. He's encouraging. It's a sold-out game. So after you leave our Tiger tailgate, you can go to our websites, 939theeagle.com, KWOS.com. You can get free passes to Tiger tailgate. You go to the website, and there you can see all the locations all across mid-Missouri where you can pick these things up. But I'm just digging Eli's attitude. He's like, show up early, raise heck. Be loud, be rambunctious. That will help our players. And Brady Cook, by the way, does he need any help right now? Didn't he just set some kind of like SEC record or something, Hannah?
Yeah, for the most completed passes without having thrown an interception.
And he pasted almost 400 yards on Van.
burdened by what has been. What could be unburdened by what had been. What can be.
That's Kamala Harris, obviously, and she might be at the center of why this homeless thing in St. Louis blew up again. Something we covered yesterday with Christopher Arps, St. Louis, and the homeless issue. They want to take your money, and they want to take your money and pay for all that stuff. And I'm not. Please understand, I'm not being callous. I love what New York City Mayor Eric Adams says when it relates to illegal immigration and homeless services. We have an abundance of compassion. We do not have an abundance of resources. But in St. Louis became...
There it is. I knew the but was coming.
But we do have an abundance of compassion. And I think it's important to bring that up because progressives do a good job with saying, well, you're just mean and cruel. You don't like illegal immigration because the people are brown. That's why you're racist. You don't like homelessness because of this. No, it's about resources, and it's about taking my taxpayer dollars. For example, in St. Louis, as folks were moving back into City Hall, it's a strain on law enforcement. It's a strain on EMT. And they kept saying, well, before we kick these people out, we got to find places for them to live. So here's a couple of folks, a couple from Arizona. They have 3 dogs, these homeless people living at this encampment in St. Louis, and they didn't want to be separated from their dogs. So St. Louis taxpayers got them a tiny home to stay in. That would be awesome. If I go to Columbia, hey, you're feeding and doing all... you just give me some free food, give me a place to live. And then there was another a couple. They didn't want to split from each other. So the city said, here you go. Here's a house. We'll put you in there for a while. You can thank the taxpayers of St. Louis. And that's the point of frustration.
Yeah, I mean, as this debate, rages on in St. Louis, I would encourage people to go back and listen to our interview with Alon Werman. He just won a court case in Arizona over a homeless encampment. And, the city kept saying, okay, if we're going to move these homeless people out, then we have to have 1 bed for every 1 person that's in this homeless encampment. And their argument was, no, actually, you don't need 1 bed because many of these people in this encampment are choosing they would not choose to go into a shelter even if a bed was available. That's and right. So they did all this research. They have a survey. They had to go before the judge with this evidence, and the evidence showed only 15% of people would even accept a bed if it was available.
Matter of fact, I want to highlight something from the Missourian as it relates to local homelessness. The Missourian, I think inadvertently, they nailed it, and why leadership in mid-Missouri doesn't get it, I don't get why they don't get it. But Kamala might be at the center of all this. There happens to be a big event this weekend in St. Louis. Democratic National Committee coming to Missouri. So think about the conundrum here. They're trying to say, hey, maybe we should clean up downtown because we have problems downtown anyway, trying to lure people here and the crime in downtown St. Louis.
Some high-profile incidents. Don't forget the girl that lost her legs.
Yep. So now you've got all these homeless people, and they bring in drugs and fighting and the stench, and people are on the corner like, Mike, come on, man. This is just it's just insane that you're doing this. So the conundrum, I guess, would have been, so you've got Kamala. She's going to be here Friday. You've got the big, folks from the Democratic National Committee going to be in Missouri. So the conundrum is, well, where's, rainbows and unicorns? But we just don't want you to see it at City Hall, because we're progressives and they get so twisted up about this. Meanwhile, story in the Missourian, there was so it's Kamala Harris. I think that's why they probably because you had progressives disagreeing with progressives on how to handle this because they kept saying, "Well, offer them shelter, offer them shelter." They don't want it. My goodness. And so an article in the Missourian was talking about there was a thing over the weekend at a church in Columbia that does, and I appreciate church does that. Not my taxpayer dollars. I don't want to go and buy somebody a tiny house. I don't have a tiny house, but I'd sure love it if you would buy one for me. But this was at Wilkes Boulevard United Methodist Church, and they had interested neighbors. They invited these folks. According to the Missourian, a dozen neighbors, church council members, loaves and fishes were there. Homeless people were invited. None attended. The homeless people don't want to go and listen to these solutions. They don't. They just don't care. So here you have it in the Missourian. What smart people have been saying all along, they don't care, but they want to keep taking money and throwing my money. They want Brian Houseworth to buy them food and little houses.
Well, there is and we'll see exactly what happens, but in the ARPA funding, there is potentially millions of dollars that will go to the homeless. They're looking at, the plan is to build the homeless shelter on the business loop or near the business loop, near the power plant. So we'll see what happens on that. But, the tying in with the situation in St. Louis, it's similar. The difference between Columbia and although our numbers at homeless, it's hard to tell. I mean, DeCarlin Seawood has told me he thinks it's between 100 to 200. I think it's probably more than that. I don't remember any camps like we've seen at the one down at City Hall, but we definitely have seen the camps, not at City Hall, but up near the Bob Evans and stuff. But there are people panhandling. I don't know if they're homeless or not, but they are at almost every intersection in Columbia on I-70. You could look at I-70 and 63, and I'm talking about every interchange. Clark Lane, they're at every one right now. They're probably out there this morning, but I see them all the time. I've seen some of them out there at 11 o'clock at night.
Brian mentions I-70, and I just want to let y'all know that we're getting some texts in that I-70 East is stopped west of Columbia. Don't have more information yet, but just if you're on I-70 East, you might, keep an eye out and slow down.
And I think somewhere on 54, we've got a listener text we haven't confirmed, but saying traffic on 54 headed into Jefferson City, backed up all the way to the First Holt Summit exit. Not sure why. If you're in those areas,
the one in Columbia, a vehicle went into the embankment. That's what's called. I don't know why the traffic is slowing down, but that happened right before I came in here. But nobody seriously hurt. Although I heard Gail Blumenkamp on the scanner out there. That's probably what that is.
Two things. Number one, do you get paid every time you mention Bob Evans and Cracker Barrel?
I do not. You should. I do not. I probably should. Steak and Shake. Mark Smokle.
You need to capitalize on that, Housework.
No,
NIL, Brian.
No, nothing like that. But that really is where we're talking about a lot of it. But they're down on Rangeland. They're in Providence. They're at every I-7, Lake of the Woods too.
And that reminds me, we talk about these social media influencers who get famous and everything, talk about products. Think about this. You have Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, John Marsh, local influencers. Right. So like if you're a business or something, and you're like, man, I would love to have a spokesperson. How's this social media influencing work? It's producer Hannah. It's Stephanie Bell. It's John Marsh. I make it sound like I'm an account executive. So call Zimmer Communications if you're interested. If you're interested in having an influencer for your business,
I agree.
These people can do it. Look at the success of Bob Evans and Cracker Barrel over the years because of Brian Hansen, or Brian Houseworth mentioning the Brian Hansen. He's the star of the Gary Nolan Show, which takes place 9 o'clock this morning. And then the other thing I was going to mention, the panhandlers, mostly not homeless. Homeless people typically do not panhandle, my experience over the years. But there's a group of panhandlers. I want to compare and contrast here, and I might be off base because I don't like to compare. Well, what about this or what about this? But I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't like to my rear end.
There's a couple. I mean, this is a job for them. But it's at shops at Broadway. So this is in Columbia, 63 and Broadway. And you got, the Five Guys and all those places there, big thing. It's got the Walmart and Hy-Vee. And there is a couple, and they stand out there on Broadway right at the second entrance into the big shopping plaza there. I think they've been there at least 3 years.
Wow.
Like clockwork. Every day, the dude handles the median out in the middle of Broadway. She stands in the median at the exit from this place, and they're there every day. And you know why they're there every day? Because people will continue to give them money. But it's like that's their job. That's what they...
Dedication.
Now, I will say this. When I'm in Jefferson City, I just don't see a lot of panhandlers.
Not a lot. But they're there. They are there, but not...
There's a few,
Not near. You're spot on. Not nearly as many.
And it makes me wonder, why is that?
Well, Fred Perry on this radio station has alleged that homeless people have been dropped off. He has alleged that on this radio station they've been dropped off, and I believe the town he mentioned was Joplin, dropping off homeless people. I have no way to confirm that, but whether they're being dropped off or not, it seems to be a growing number, and I don't know if these people panhandling are homeless or not, but I do see a lot of cars giving them money. I also see panhandling in downtown Columbia where they're in front of stores and stuff.
And they accost people and scare the heck out of people.
Well, the CPOA has said, I've not heard about accosting, but the CPOA has said that we've had incidents of defecation on the streets of public streets of downtown Columbia. So, there are, I don't know, it's a difficult issue. The city is hoping this homeless shelter will solve the issue, Brandon. Obviously, you're not optimistic, but
I'm realistic. As somebody who's done work with homeless people for a lot of years, I'm realistic. I think they're in. To your point about the homeless people being dropped off here, when I lived on the Gulf Coast, there was a city in Florida, and they would do that. They would get the homeless people, and they would try to ship them off to other places. I've seen it happen.
Wow.
And earlier this year, had a law enforcement agency in between Fulton and St. Louis call me here at the radio station saying, hey, we've got a homeless person. I want to be accurate. We've got a homeless person. I've heard there's good services there. Can we bring them there? And I'm like, call Mayor Barbara Buffalo. She'll let him in her house, I guess, John.
And that's what's,
and that's the issue for a lot of people out there. It's one of those things, I don't know, sweep under the carpet or whatever, but it's a growing issue, and it's not just Columbia.
No, it's St. Louis, too. And actually, Megan Green, to what you just said, Brandon, who's a councilwoman in St. Louis, when she was tweeting about this situation with the tent yesterday, look at some of the replies in her Twitter feed, because some of the people are saying, why don't you take them into your home? And somebody saying, what a horrible thing that they did. What a horrible, basically, how could you say that? How could you say that? But that's what it's really, it's divided. I've seen a lot of people very upset that the homeless people are being treated like this, but others are saying, the city should do more.
It's hypocritical, rainbows and unicorns. If you really care that much about it, then let these people camp in your front yard. Let homeless people stay at your house. If you really care about that, you don't care about it. But you do have no problem taking my money and buying these people little homes and feeding them ad infinitum. Coming up, Morning Bell Business News with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
We're talking retirement this year. If you're planning to give your
business news with a little twist that only Stephanie Bell can give you.
Well, the market had a bad day yesterday, so there's really only one way to go, and the futures are showing all just slightly in the green this morning. As I opened the Wall Street Journal this morning, the top of the top 5 articles, there were 2 dealing with retirement, and this one I thought, really? They said, hey, there used to be this really great retirement destination, and now people should rethink. And they said Ecuador was a retirement paradise for Americans. Has anyone ever casually said, you know what, I'm thinking about retiring in Ecuador?
I've never heard that. South America, some countries in South America, but never Ecuador.
I had to kind of fact check that. I'm like, no way. And so I started kind of Googling around, and yeah, there's a Mansion Global thing that forget Florida, U.S. retirees are hitting the rainforest in Ecuador, and this other international living, an affordable and safe retirement destination. And I guess their currency collapsed, so now they kind of adopted the dollar, and then, they're walking through the home prices. So they've obviously got beautiful beaches and other, and it's a nice place, or it's a beautiful place to be. But they said also the home prices and condo prices, even the city centers, are really comparable. When they were walking through those prices, it sounded a lot like mid-Missouri. You could get a nice place for a couple $100,000, and when you're thinking of, retirement destinations, you probably can't get that in Florida, right? Yes. So they were saying it was affordable. It's easy for Americans to, go down there. And actually a lot of folks were going down there. But now the Journal is reporting that it was a retirement paradise. Then the drug gangs arrived. And they said the killings, I think there were 7,000 killings this year so far. That's 7 times the number in 2018. And they said it's likely being driven by neighboring country Colombia, and then all of these drug gangs. And now a lot of folks who were spending their retirement there are now thinking we gotta go somewhere else. It's just unsafe. And so as we see what the drug cartels are doing amongst our own border, you gotta wonder. You look at these other countries and the history there, and you just wonder. It just keeps creeping closer to America.
And the thing I thought was really interesting, a couple of trending stories on Wall Street Journal specifically, 2 of the top 5 stories are about retirement. And one of the things that tells, maybe I'm getting way off the track here, but people are, which we should be anyway, paying attention, but people especially now, with things the way they are since January 20th, 2021, I'm paying attention to my retirement more so.
And where can I go that I can retire cheaply? And where am I on track? And that was what the other article said. And, I'll do anything to promote my own generation. And what the Wall Street Journal is saying is that millennials are actually on better track than boomers or Gen Z as far as retirement goes. And so they looked at, what spending needs you would need, and then whether you had saved enough to replace your retirement income. And it changes based on income level. But at every income level, every medium income, millennials outpaced the older generations as far as being on track to meet your retirement goals. And I think that's really interesting. And so you're thinking, well, why? We have lived in historic times, and it hasn't exactly been easy on us, especially as we entered the workforce in the middle of the recession. But they said, unlike older generations, typically now when you get into a job, there's a 401k plan, and rather than it being opt-in, generally it's just automatic. And I think that's a good reminder for us all, because if I don't see that money, if it's something that I have set up automatic, then, it's like, okay, that works. And then also, you hear constantly, the younger you start, the better off you'll be. So that's what they're saying. The automatic, right when you get out of school, is really boosting millennials' retirement.
Back in my day, Gen Xer here,
That right there is respectable nepotism. Because the kid went to Duke, his grandma gave him $250. He could have been like, I'm not doing anything. But his dad said, nope, you start from the bottom. So that's what I also teach my kids. And I also have to teach them, we're not rich. I'm rich.
Still love that. Shaquille O'Neal, it reminded me as we were doing the Morning Bell, Stephanie's story about retirement and the number of folks. Wall Street Journal today, 2 of the top 5 trending stories have to do with retirement. And it tells me people are like, man, the way things are, seriously, I really got to buckle down, because I thought for the longest time my retirement plan was the inheritance that I was going to get from my dad.
Really?
Now look what happened to retirement plans as far back as 2008 when the bottom fell out. People lost all sorts of money from IRAs and 401ks and all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness Social Security, Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
I saw a lot of people buying lottery tickets this week.
$1 billion tonight. By the way, coming up in leftovers at 8:50. Some dude recently won like $2 million in the lottery, and of course, it's the age-old question: if you won the lottery, would you quit? And I always say, people say, "Would you retire? Would you retire if you won the lottery?" I'm like, I wouldn't retire. I just quit. I wouldn't retire at all. But this guy was asked by his bosses. He's like, "Hey, what would it take for you to not leave?" And his response is classic. We'll do that in leftovers at 8:50.
I also saw a story recently where someone won $50,000 off of a lottery ticket that was gifted to them. And my question is, if that happens to you, do you feel obligated to share some of that money with the person who gifted you the lottery ticket?
I don't think I would feel I wouldn't feel...
Depends who it was.
I wouldn't feel obligated, but I just would, out of common courtesy. I wouldn't feel like I would have to.
There's a movie years ago. Nichols Cage was in a movie. I don't know, very similar, as I recall. They split. Somebody bought it for him. I can't remember. But there was a movie about they won the lottery. Bridget Fonda was a waitress. It was actually, and there was a good movie about news reporting. In this homeless guy. Was actually, they thought he was homeless. He was a reporter. It was a really good movie, but on this very scenario you guys are bringing up, very similar. But I cannot remember the name of the movie. It probably was 30 years ago.
It could happen to you.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Great.
Like when I buy the most lottery tickets is like around Christmas, and I stuff them in everyone's stocking. And if someone hit it big, I would be like, don't you want to share that? I think I would feel like I would want them to share it with me.
So on the other end of Hannah's question is, would you, if somebody bought you a ticket, say, hey, here you go, I spent $5 on a Powerball ticket, whatever, and then next day you're like, holy crap, Joe won, and you're like, would you
call them up?
Do you feel obligated to give them a share of your winnings? But if you're the one
who bought it,
would you expect that person would give you some?
I think it depends on how much it is, right?
So when my brother and I were growing up, one of our family members would buy us lottery tickets, even though we were underage. And there was one Christmas, my brother won $500 off of a scratcher. And he got really mad when my parents made him split it with me.
I love that. It has happened to us before. I remember we were out at a bar, and Chris and I were out at a bar. There was a bachelor party, and it was like during COVID. We were in a different state, and we were like the only people in the bar. They were super friendly and fun, and we were saying hi. And they had a pull tab machine, which we don't have in bars and gas stations here in Missouri. So Chris bought one for $1 and played himself, and then he bought one and said, hey, happy wedding, like congrats, buddy, or whatever. He pulled the tab and won $100.
Wow.
And he felt super guilty. And he was like, oh, let me, whatever. And I think we eventually worked it out where he bought a round of beers or something. Sure. But he was ready to give it all back to us. And we're like, no, we didn't expect anything. We gave that to you as a gift. We're out $1. Who cares? But he really felt like he needed to give it back to us. And we're like, happy wedding.
That's a really interesting thing. I would, if someone bought me, if someone bought a lottery ticket for me, I would.
Yeah,
I would share.
Do it out of kindness.
I would share, and I would also donate a lot to charity as well.
Someone's got a wedding coming up if you wanted to stuff your envelopes with cash and lottery tickets.
And don't forget the government. The government is going to take a big bite out of whatever you get. Their Uncle Sam will get his money. But it is interesting to think about that.
Hannah's getting to be a short timer before she gets married here shortly. Actually, she got married over the weekend. Steps, Montauk County Courthouse. I can make it public now. So that's what I would do. I'll come in tomorrow, and I won $1 billion on the Powerball lottery, and I don't buy lottery tickets even when it's $1 billion. I just don't. But I'd come in tomorrow and, hey, man, I won $1 million. Stephanie, thanks for buying me a lottery ticket. Here's $50. I would cut you in on the winnings. Here's $50. This is Wake Up in Missouri. There's John Marsh.
Good morning.
Will you buy a ticket?
Probably.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
How many will you buy?
One.
Yeah. What are they, $2?
Yeah, $2.
Something like that. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
It's Mr. Brian Houseworth.
Just a quick note, I-70, I just got off the phone with Joint Communications, eastbound lane that Stephanie referenced here not too long ago. That has cleared. They were a little surprised, the dispatchers, we were getting calls about that. What happened is a vehicle went off the embankment. No serious injuries. They were able to walk away, but that is cleared. Apparently, it tied up traffic for quite a while, though.
Producer Hannah is here. You nervous? You stressed as you get close to the big day?
No, not at all. Not at all. We're big chilling over here.
Facetious is the word we are looking for. Danny says via text 874-9390, says, just picked up my Tiger tailgate tickets. Big O Tire, go Mizzou. He says, thank you. A whole bunch of different places you can go in mid-Missouri if you want. This is going to be a huge game. Saturday, LSU, Mizzou sold out. Eli Drinkwitz saying yesterday, telling us, say, man, get there, get to the stadium early, make noise, raise some heck. So if you want to join Danny at the big old Tiger tailgate, really biggest Tiger tailgate in all of mid-Missouri, we feed Buffalo Wild Wings. We give you free Bud Light beer. High Noon helps us out, as does Hy-Vee Echo Water Systems, Twain Barbecue and Tap Room. If you're in Jefferson City, you can go to the Big O Tires. You can also go to Big Whiskeys. You can go to Graff & Sons in Mexico. And in Columbia, you can go into G&D Pizzeria, and you just ask for them, and they just give them to you. It's free. There's recently a story we covered, and I'm a hard no. It's an easy hard no. I don't even have to think about this one. I get all moral and stuff. If Hannah, producer Hannah, bought me a lottery ticket and I won, I'd say, here's some money. Not because I'd feel obligated, just because that's what I would do. But now if I'm on an airplane for a seat that I bought and I'm making that hour and a half jaunt from Columbia to Dallas, Texas, so I can fly to Boise to see the grandkids, and I'm in the section that I paid seat for, I paid good money for, and somebody came up and said, hey, my kid is sitting there. We didn't get tickets together. Would you mind so that my 8-year-old kid could sit with me? My first question would be, how much cash you got on you? I might sell you this seat right here and now for cash on this airplane. I might do that. But otherwise, no, I'm sorry. I know you want to sit with your kid, but maybe when you were buying the plane tickets, with all due politeness, maybe you should have thought about that then. And Stephanie's been bumped. You know what Stephanie's been bumped for on airplanes before?
Dogs.
Small horses, right?
out of first class into the back of the plane for a dog. And the airline did not care and wasn't offering me any money. But I'm with you. No. And I think the story that went viral, the gal who said, I'm not giving up my seat, said it wasn't like it was a 3-year-old. It was like a 12 or 13-year-old kid. It's not like it was a baby. Come on.
Yeah.
Brandon, you say that you would say no, but I feel like in the moment, you wouldn't want to let that person down.
Listen, I complained about alligator bites at a restaurant the other day. No. I will have an easy time saying
you
no.
were bitten by an alligator at a restaurant?
You can't bring your emotional support alligator into the restaurant. John told you that.
What was there to complain about with alligator bites?
I didn't complain. I just asked a question.
What was the question?
The question. So there's a restaurant open up.
Which part of the alligator did the bite come from?
Well, incidentally, as I get ready to tell the story, that's maybe a really good question, John. But it was a restaurant opened up earlier this year, and I love alligator meat. But you go to most places, and they do sell it. They take a piece of alligator meat that's the size of a marble, and then they put enough breading on it. By the time they're done cooking it, it's the size of a golf ball. It's all breading. It's very little meat. But this new place that opened up earlier this year, and they had alligator meat. And it was chunks of alligator, and it was incredible. And anytime I get the opportunity, I'll go there and I will get the alligator because it's big chunks of alligator meat, and it is delicious. And I took a friend, Scotty, from one of our country stations around here. He and I went to lunch. We got to go here, got to get the alligator. And I'm bragging about this place. So I'm selling it to somebody, right? Selling it to somebody. And we get there, and they serve and it's in little alligator balls. To answer your question, John, about what part of the alligator do these things come from? But I was disappointed
in the size of the
customer.
Yeah, I won't go back there until they get that alligator meat right.
So you were complaining about the quality of the alligator in mid-Missouri.
Yeah, that's accurate. But I wasn't complaining. I just asked a question. The waitress comes back over. I'm like, hey, your alligator meat used to be this, and now it's this. Is this a new thing, or was it a bad day at the alligator factory? What happened here? And she says, well, since I've been here, that's how we've done it. I said, how long have you been here? She said, 3 weeks. Well, it's not the way it used to be. So I didn't complain, but I did ask.
At least you didn't, try to talk to the manager or something.
This close.
Seriously.
Well, I didn't want to complain, but I wanted to ask because that will shape my decision on whether or not I'll go back in the future. Like, hey, is this just a one-off? So anyhow, an airline.
JetBlue is solving the problem.
How are they doing that? You want to cover that in leftovers? What do you want to do here? Do we have time?
Yeah, we got
know
time.
Branden didn't have any leftover alligator meat.
It's short here. No, JetBlue is saying, hey, we're going to guarantee that if you book on the same reservation and you've got a kid under 13, they're guaranteed to be at least with one adult. And I think, Branden, they do it like Southwest, so the random seating. So you can't really book 2 seats together, but they're saying, okay, we're going to guarantee that at least one kid, one adult.
And hopefully that'll settle the debate for now. Coming up 5 minutes from now, some leftovers. A few things we didn't get a chance to get to, but we think is still worthwhile. I want to share an answer. Dude recently won $2 million. He's quitting work. His boss said, what is it going to take for you to not leave? His answer
numbers. Enjoy.
A couple of weeks ago, this dude, his name's Earl, and he wins $2 million in a lottery. And he's like a factory worker, true, the stereotypical American. He gets up every morning, sits and has coffee with the wife at the table, and she goes to her job, and he goes to the factory. And he's been doing it for a lot of years, getting ready for retirement. He wins $2 million in the lottery. And he goes to work and says, excuse me, boss, I won $2 million in the lottery. And he says, so I'm going to go ahead and separate myself from the company, terminate my employment, whatever it is you want to call it. And the boss says to the guy, he says, well, what would it take for you to stay? And the guy says, well, $2 million in a schedule where I don't have to go to work. You do that, I'll turn down the lottery winnings, and I'll stay working for you. I like that answer. I really do. What you got, Steph?
It would be a tough choice. Apparently, there are more sports betting initiative petitions getting filed. There were already some on file. Some additional ones went on file yesterday. As Missouri has kind of been slow to join. I think all the other states around us have sports betting. We expect that to maybe be a hot topic again in the legislative session, but it hasn't seen much success in the past.
And this could have some impact. Look at what happened at the Super Bowl. There's a map where you can track where people are betting. And what Stephanie showed us that day was fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of people were trying to bet from inside Missouri, and obviously we're told, that we don't have legal sports betting.
But you could see in this map, and it will ping or whatever, puts a marker on the map, and you can see where these people are betting. So even if I were to get online today and try to place a bet on something on the Mizzou game Saturday, I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it legally. But for folks who are in Kansas City,
so what I'm hearing is there's a chance.
I mean, and that's what's hard with Missouri is we have so many other states that a lot of people are really close to, so you can cross the line and place your bet, and then Missouri's not getting any of the benefit of that.
So all those people cross the state lines into other states, and guess what else crossed the state line into those states?
Yeah, their money and taxes. So I think that's one, but it's certainly something we're watching. We've been talking a ton about candidates and the statewide races in 2024, and then we've also talked a lot. Those abortion IPs are currently tied up in litigation. So what issues are we going to be voting on? I think that's really important. And if you can get on the Secretary of State's website and see, I think there's well over 100 initiatives filed. You can kind of see what might be out there, but as we get closer, people are going to have to start gathering those signatures, which is not a cheap process, and so we're going to get a better idea of who's serious about going to the ballot and who's not.
Marsh, what you got?
Well, we're looking at, folks, what's it going to take to make you stick around and stay on the job after your big win? Aaron Rodgers, he signed that 2-year, $75 million deal when they were originally offering 110, so he could get some roster players. And now the latest on Aaron Rodgers, the docs say he is, quote, well ahead of the normal protocols and still clinging to the belief that he can return at QB for the Jets this season.
Just in time.
Believe it when we see it.
Maybe he'll make it for 6 snaps this time.
There you go.
Did you say he was on TV yesterday? He was being asked about the performance against the Kansas City Chiefs on
making smart remarks about TK as well.
Did you hear his nickname for Travis Kelce?
Yeah. What was it?
Mr. Pfizer, because he's doing PSAs supporting COVID vaccines. By the way, I'll include this in leftovers. There's recently some polling, and I haven't talked about it. I don't talk about it. Tired of it. The government pandemic was fun to talk about in 2020. It wasn't even fun then, and certainly spend very little time on it now. But I thought an interesting opinion poll, majority of Americans say I'm just not getting the next vaccine anymore. And that I think you can attribute to people like Fauci and the misinformation, the lies, and things like that. Also in leftovers, I know that John Marsh has covered this very well throughout the morning. What's happening at 1:20 today, John?
1:20, they're doing the big national FEMA/FCC, basically emergency alert practice that they do, I think, every 3 years. And we'll have the tones, and you'll hear the announcement here on the radio station. And then you'll also get the same info on your smartphone. Unless you got the thing completely turned off, you're going to get it.
And there are some people that have been encouraged to turn their phones off.
Yeah, if you're in a situation where you have a domestic violence issue and perhaps you have a separate phone that someone doesn't know about, you're being encouraged to turn your phone off to protect yourself.
So in other words, you're hiding a phone and it's something you're keeping from somebody, and then all of a sudden it starts dinging or doing whatever noise this is going to make today. Obviously, that would not be a good situation. So some things to keep in mind. Also want to make sure you keep this in mind, man. We're getting ready. This is going to be huge on Saturday. I love Eli Drinkwitz to say, man, come out to the stadium early on Saturday. Raise heck, sold out game. Go to places in Columbia like Vaughn Pools and Spas. Get your free Tiger tailgate passes. Also Vaughn Pools and Spas in Jefferson City and in Boonville. You go to Club Car Wash. Free Buffalo Wild Wings. Free Bud Light. We are giving away the Bud Light. And by the way, we appreciate the local distributors. And the heck,